The A-League recently kicked off down under, and I said this on a TikTok video predicting the season. If you've got a suggestion for a club for me to manage, a challenge for me to take on, let me know in the comments. And the official TikTok account of Western Sydney Wanderers popped up in my comments. So I jumped on that plane, and here I am. Western Sydney Wanderers have a short but action-packed history, only coming into existence 12 years ago, topping the A-League table in their first season and just missing out in the grand final. Their second season was even better, runners-up in the league, again reaching the grand final, but unbelievably winning the Asian Champions League just 2.5 years after they were founded. They are so far the only Aussie side to win Asia's premier club competition, so our challenge is to bring those glory days back by once again becoming A-League premiers, while also winning the grand final for the first time and reclaiming that AFC Champions League crown. I'm using the FM24 update for this, so the squad is the one from the start of the current season, meaning in addition to talents like Lawrence Thomas, Brazilian veteran Marcelo, and young prospect Nicholas Milanovic, we have new signings like Marcus Antonsen and World Cup winner Juan Mata to bolster the team. But before we get to the start of the season, we would have to get our head around the A-League squad registration and financial rules. And these are amongst the most bizarre and confusing set of rules I've ever seen. And I say that as someone who's done a few MLS saves over the years. There's a salary cap of $25,500 a week, and that's for the whole squad, not each player. We do, however, have the right to name 2 designated players who do not count towards that cap. You can also put youngsters on scholarship contracts that do not count towards the cap, but do count towards the overall roster size, which is a mere 23 players. And then you have to subscribe to the channel and like this video. A bizarre rule, I know, but one that's very much appreciated. At first I was a bit confused, as I could not make the real life squad work within those limits. But then I realised that Mata was not actually on a DP contract in the game, and several youngsters were on full contracts rather than scholarships. So I quickly renegotiated those deals, and we were then able to register all our key players, though a few squad members still had to be let go. Like Tom Beedling, his contract voided when not registered for the squad. There were some further frustrations that popped up as well. First of all, a club-imposed rule that players over 30 can only have limited contracts, and then the fact that key players get concerned about lack of squad depth. I mean, we can only name 23 players within a very tight wage budget. What do they expect me to do about that? Nevertheless, after a successful pre-season, we took to the field for our opening game against Wellington Phoenix. It took less than 2 minutes for our stars to align as Milanovic stormed down the left across for Juan Mata to score on his debut. Mata would be involved again minutes later, playing through Borrello, who set up Antonsen for another debutant goal. That was it for the scoring, but a successful start. And things got even better the next week as we put Western United to the sword. But we then struggled in our first away game to Newcastle Jets, falling behind with 15 minutes to go. Valentino UL then got his first goal for the club, and it seemed like that saved us a point until Lachlan Rose struck in the final minute. Our first defeat. But we bounced back, winning 4 of our next 5. Great form, but disappointingly our only drop points came in the Sydney derby. We would then close out the year with a mad 4-4 draw at Wellington, before a defeat in the other Sydney derby at Macarthur FC. Meaning with 10 matches played, we sat second, just 2 points behind rivals Sydney FC. We were struggling with injuries at this point, young defender Donny Gordic out, and Juan Mata facing almost 2 months on the shelf as we moved into the new year. We also had young backup goalie Tiger Oliver Harper out with a long-term injury, which ordinarily wouldn't be too big of a deal, except that it clashed with the absence of first-choice goalkeeper Lawrence Thomas, who was away with Australia at the Asian Cup. So we had to play our under-19s keeper Lawrence Caruso instead. But that didn't turn out to be an issue, as even though he conceded in every game, we went unbeaten in January, picking up 13 points. There was to be further bad news at the end of January though, as Juan Mata spent his time out injured, negotiating with other clubs, and will be going to Udinese on a free at the end of the season. We had one new arrival in January, as we signed Royston Griffiths on a free. We had to terminate Jeong Tae-wook's loan deal in order to register him, but it helped keep us within the salary cap as we negotiated new deals with Donny Gordic and Valentino UL, who also, by the way, picked up an injury. Only 3 games in February, but they were all wins with a fit again Mata on fire. which only makes his impending departure all the more painful. But perhaps not as painful as our second Sydney derby of the season, a 2-0 home defeat. Still, we can console ourselves with our position at the top of the table, our January and February form putting us 12 points clear. The defeat to Sydney was soon brushed aside as we took down Western United, and then blew a 2-goal lead but still earned a point away to Perth Glory. As the end of the season drew nearer, we had an 8-point lead with Brisbane Roar and Sydney FC our only realistic rivals. And after we had finally got a derby win over MacArthur, we faced off with Brisbane Roar in early April, knowing that all that was needed to secure top spot in the league is for you to subscribe. Thanks. And for us to win the game, of course. Enter a young regen who has had an impactful debut season so far, Petros Tsianios. And he would make the decisive impact here, getting into a great position to convert Clisby's cross, enough for the win, and raise the title as we top the table and become A-League premiers. But the domestic season doesn't end there, as we now head into the finals series, the A-League equivalent to the MLS playoffs. We still had 3 league games to go as well, as we finally got a win over Sydney, before seeing off Melbourne City and getting a draw with their neighbours Victory, finishing 11 points clear. We had a bye in the first playoff round with Brisbane Roar and Melbourne Victory earning their spots in the semi-finals. We faced Brisbane Roar again and duked out a pair of tough wins to take the tie 5-3 on aggregate, setting up a grand final clash with rivals Sydney. We got off to a dream start, a well-worked set piece allowing Antonsen to open the scoring, and the Super Swede had us 2 goals up inside 10 minutes as he tapped in from Tsianios' world-class assist. But we then perhaps started to celebrate too early, as Kilmala pulled one back. And then, just after the half-hour mark, Sydney were level after Griffin rose at the back post. That gave us a good kick up the backseat, however, and just before half-time, Mata earned us a penalty, the Spaniard in his last game for the club, re-establishing our lead. In the second half, we kept things under control until Tsianios twisted and turned his way to a deflected goal with 10 to play. We would make the supporters sweat a little though, as we gave away a penalty late on. Douglas Costa, a player I managed in my LA Galaxy Challenge a couple of years ago, converting, but we managed to see out stoppage time without incident and win the grand final for the first time. Mata and Antonsen tied for the Golden Boot award, with Mata getting the nod due to his 7 assists. Lawrence Thomas won Goalkeeper of the Year, and we had 7 players, not Mata though, in the A-League Team of the Season. But I was shockingly shunted into second for Manager of the Year, despite entering the Aussie Hall of Fame after just 1 season. So the domestic part of the challenge set for us by Western Sydney Wanderers is complete, but we must now turn our attention to the Asian Champions League. And that will be the focus of our next episode as we enter Season 2. You'll find it here as soon as it's ready.